Hello, this is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose of Dylan, Google Podcast, Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio. This is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose of Dylan. Alright, so we have some good stuff today. A lot of talk about the divisional round coming up for the NFL. And, going to talk more about the Eagles' collapse. And, yeah. So, I do have to explain, you did just, I think, about 2 hours ago, get my podcast from yesterday, so if you're listening to this before episode 186, I suggest you go get off this one and go to 186 before listening to this one. But, alright. So I'm going to open up with the Bills, pretty much cruising past the Steelers, just straight dominance on their part. Same thing with the Bucs yesterday. There wasn't... I don't think against teams blowing other teams out, but, I mean, it did take away some of the excitement, you know? I mean, the Rams-Lions was an exciting one, but other than that, the divisional round games were pretty much just blowouts for the most part. But yeah, so the Bills, they took control of the game early and pretty much didn't look back. Josh Allen was incredible, obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I think there's the only people that may have not seen this coming are the people that are, you know, if you're a sucker for a good story, and or you just bought into Tomlin's genius, but the Steelers have now lost 5 consecutive postseason games, and, you know, as great as Tomlin is, his defensive style does not work in the postseason. I mean, and I'm not a big fan of, because I know the counter argument to that would be, well, Sean McDermott's a defensive coach as well, but you know, I think him and Tomlin are similar. They're defensive coaches, and yet they still win in today's game. McDermott more so than Tomlin, and I think that's because McDermott's become less rigid over time. I think Tomlin's kind of just stuck in his own ways. So I think McDermott kind of loosening up a bit has helped. And I would say it's because of a good offensive coordinator, but that's not... I mean, they have an interim. I mean, Joe Brady's doing fine. It's just... he's an interim OC. So, I mean, it's not like It's not like they hired him thinking they got a genius coming in. But yeah, I think for the most part, you can be a defensive head coach as long as you have a great offensive coordinator. You know, but... yeah, I think the Bills, they have a great team. They've had it for years. I think the loss of Brian Daboll was kind of a hit, but it seemed to be the same Bills. Clearly the story isn't any different because they're playing the Chiefs again in the divisional round. I would love to see an AFC championship between the two, but seems like we're stuck with them playing each other in the divisional round again. I think it's going to be a great game. It's a tough call. I'll give you my prediction for the game later on. But I mean, this is the most vulnerable we've seen the Chiefs. But I mean, it's hard to ignore how much experience they have. They've made the Super Bowl 3 of the last 4 years, so it's hard to argue against them. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to watch. They're 1 win away from the AFC title game. And that being said, let's move on to a team that I thought, and many others thought would make the NFC title game, but fell off a cliff, the Eagles. And, you know, Nick Sirianni, I mean, I think it was the first year, I think he came to the Eagles the first year I did this podcast back in, I think, 2021. He came to the Eagles. I remember being really critical of him and Dan Campbell because of their first press conferences. I just didn't wasn't really feeling them. Nick Sirianni was he didn't seem confident. He seemed very unsure of himself pretty much. And Dan Campbell, he was confident. It just what he was saying was just not. I wasn't computing with me pretty much. But yes, I mean, Nick Sirianni, I had doubts to begin with. He did. I mean, last year I was pro Nick Sirianni because I don't want to see any head coaches fail. But last year after they made the Super Bowl last year, so obviously that got me. That'll get you praising a head coach if he makes the Super Bowl. But I am now looking back. Things were bad in Philly until Shane Steichen came. Now he leaves. He's doing well in Indianapolis, but now he leaves, and the Eagles, they did go 11-6. I'm not saying they had a bad year, but the last few weeks they've lost 6 of their last 7 games. That's hard to ignore. That's not exactly great. So I mean, I think a lot of the reason for Philly's success last year was Shane Steichen and his play calling on the offensive side. I don't think Nick Sirianni had a lot to do with it. And you just can't have, because they have talent. Jalen Hurts has talent. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, DeAndre Swift. They lost Jason Kelce now, but they had a very talented team. And, you can't have that much talent and have those results. You can't be a first-round exit with that team. And it's possible, even if they fire Nick Sirianni, it's possible that they come back next year with a great head coach, but Jalen Hurts just isn't who we thought he was. It's very much possible this is a quarterback thing. It's hard to place blame on one specific person. But I just think, we've seen A.J. Brown succeed elsewhere. We've seen how talented, we've seen these guys can succeed with good play calling from the OC. So I don't know. I'm thinking it's a Nick Sirianni problem, but I have no idea. As I said yesterday, really have no clue what's gotten into the Eagles. So I'm going to go back to the Steelers now. So it seems the only way they win is in a low-scoring game. That seems to be, unless the other team is also a defensive team, that's the only way they win. They've had a bottom 10 offense the last 5 years. And, it's impressive that Tomlin has winning seasons with this team, but gets to a point where and you have winning seasons, but what else? They just came to the conclusion that their third-string quarterback is their best. That's not exactly great. But like I said earlier, you can have a defensive coach, and it can work if you have a very smart offensive coordinator. I'm sure if he had Ben Johnson, like the Lions have, the Steelers could work. The biggest problem the Steelers had before they fired him, of course, was Matt Canada as the offensive coordinator. And their record was awful. When Matt Canada was there, it picked up when he left. But still, their offensive coordinator isn't great. That's not going to get you to win in the playoffs. So, I have no idea what's going to happen with Tomlin. I'm assuming he's going to stay there for another year. Because I think Steelers are just afraid to fire him. But I mean, I think this might be. You could argue this would be the best year to do it. I mean, there's a lot of coaches on the market, so I don't know. It's obviously they'll make a decision. Hopefully, it works out for them. So Jerry Jones pretty much told the Cowboys. I forget which player talked about it. I think it was CeeDee Lamb. But he said Jerry Jones pretty much told them they have to win. They're the Dallas Cowboys. And I think Jones' ownership has to be addressed at some point. Obviously, he can't be fired because he's the owner. But, I mean, there has to be something. Like, there has to be a certain point where we start questioning, his leadership of the team. And not just Mike McCarthy's. And I mean, if he truly thinks Dak Prescott is an elite, like a great quarterback, he better restructure his contract because there's no way they're picking up anyone in free agency with his $54 million cap hit. And I just don't think if I'm a head coach, I think Dallas is like my fourth option out of the teams that have fired people. I think Chargers, Seattle. I would argue even the Falcons is a better destination than the Dallas right now, as talented as they are. I mean, they have so many issues with the cap. At least the Falcons, they're a young team. You can work with them. There's no big contracts to work around like the Cowboys, because they're going to be paying. It's not going to get better. They still have to pay Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, Tony Pollard. They're all going to be asking for big money. So, if they truly believe Dak's elite and that he's their guy, and he had a decent year this year. He had a really good year actually in the regular season. But that playoff game really takes his year down a notch. But yeah, he was an MVP candidate, so I mean, if you do want to keep him, that's definitely an option. But you got to restructure that contract because he's not as great as he did this season. He's not worth a $54 million cap hit. All right, so Chris Greer, the Dolphins GM, said the goal is to keep Tua long term, and in all honesty, I don't see why you would move off him. He throws the ball very well. Him and Tyreek Hill have a great connection. They get the offense going. The problem is how they play in cold weather. It's not even necessarily a playoff thing. It's not even necessarily a postseason thing. I think they're just inexperienced in the cold weather, and they have to be because they're probably going to be playing. If this Dolphins team has a future, which I think they do, they're going to have to be playing the Chiefs in Kansas City, Bills in Buffalo, Pittsburgh. They're going to have some tough conditions to play in. And if they're not good in those conditions and they're just stuck playing in 90-degree weather and that's the only conditions they can play in, then they're pretty screwed. Because then they have to be the 1 seed. It has to happen. Because then if they're not, they're probably going to have an away game at some point, and that's going to be when they lose. I don't think they need that kind of pressure. So they just have to figure out how to push him to play better in cold weather. And I should say this, I don't expect it to always be negative 27 when he plays. But I think even if it was, say, 25 or 30, like I said, Mike McDaniel is 7-12 on the road. If the conditions aren't what they are in Miami, the Dolphins are below 500 team. So I think they have to figure out how to fix that problem. And I mean, like I said yesterday, they have a lot of talent. The Dolphins got a great roster. They've I mean, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, that's almost an unfair receiver duo. And they even have two productive running backs, A-Chain and what's his name, Raheem Mostert. So they have a solid team built around Mike Daniel there, and Mike Daniel's a good coach. They just have to figure out how to play in other conditions. So Jason Kelce is retiring. Figured I should address this. I mean, I don't think there's much to address. Great center, you rarely find people talking about the O-line, or a specific O-line. And usually when I talk about O-line here, I just simply say great or bad O-line for a team. But Jason Kelce, fantastic center, Hall of Famer. That's what I gotta say about that. It's gonna be a big hit on the Eagles, though. I mean, that's going to be a big hit on that O-line, and the O-line protects Jalen Hurts. I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to have... it's going to be tougher for him. I mean, that, that tush push is not going to be the same. It might not even exist without Kelce, so... Alright, so, Dawson Knox had praise for Josh Allen, pretty much just saying it's normal to see him do crazy things. And yeah, he's a special talent. He can run. I mean, listen, he's, 6'6", maybe? Hold on. Yeah, okay, 6'5", 237, and he runs well. I mean, that's hard to beat. That's a special talent. Like I said, he reminds me a lot... I've said this before. He reminds me a lot of Brett Favre. I mean, Brett Favre didn't have the size... that Josh Allen does, but he's a great quarterback all around. It's just the interceptions and turnovers are just a little too much. They weigh him and Brett Favre down. So it's hard for me. I can never put him above Mahomes because Mahomes doesn't throw 18 interceptions. And I can't put him ahead of Mahomes, Herbert. Or, who else is there? There's, it's hard for me I mean, even Aaron Rodgers, when healthy, it's hard to put him over, Rodgers. But, yeah, pretty much like Lamar Jackson, and people say he doesn't throw the ball, and honestly, I think if he threw the ball as much as Josh Allen, he would not have as many interceptions because Lamar Jackson threw 7 interceptions this year. He had 457 attempts. So Josh Allen had 100 more attempts, but threw 11 more picks. So, okay. I'm going to do the math on that, and I'll get back to it later in the podcast, but I got to keep moving because that's going to take a bit. So, Pete Carroll talked about the Seahawks deciding to move off him. Pretty much just said whoever decided that, or he said the people who decided that are not quote-unquote football people. And, Pete Carroll, he's been a great coach. He has. He's one of few that have had success both on the college and pro level. Even Nick Saban couldn't do that. But yeah, his defense, let's not forget this, the Seattle defense has been bad the last few years. And Pete Carroll's known for his defensive coaching. Mike Tomlin gets criticism, but his defenses have been fantastic. At least Tomlin's side of the ball is doing well. But yeah, I think, he is 72. He's older than Belichick. He's the oldest coach in the league. And let's face, the Seahawks, they look good, but they're not a Super Bowl contending team for quite a while. I mean, I don't think moving off of Pete Carroll was a terrible decision. And I think Seattle, in my opinion, best job other than the Chargers. I think because the Chargers have Justin Herbert, that makes the Chargers the most attractive destination. Because as great as it has been to see Geno Smith revamp his career, he's no Justin Herbert. He can't do what Herbert does. So the Chargers are going to be probably the number one team that people are looking at now. And especially they don't have a problem with the cap. Like the Dallas Cowboys are I would say are the best team without if they fire McCarthy. I mean, a lot of people are talking about the Cowboys like they've already fired McCarthy. They haven't yet. They are looking at other coaches, so it's likely to happen, but McCarthy hasn't been fired yet. So, yeah, but if the Dallas job opens up, and if the Dallas and Philly jobs open up, I would probably say Philly is the best destination, followed by the Chargers. And I know that the Cowboys are better than the Chargers. Their roster, pound for pound, better than the Chargers. But the salary cap hell that they're in it makes it a lot less attractive to go to. Like if I were a coach, it's hard for me to look at the Cowboys cap situation and say, let me go there. Let me figure that out. Like the Seattle job, I would put it behind, again, if it opens up Philly and Seattle. I would argue Atlanta or maybe Washington is a better destination, depending on the coach, than the Dallas Cowboys. Because, I don't know, Washington's interesting. They've been bad for so long. It's hard to, if you're a coach, do you look at that organization and say, let me go to that mess? It's tough, but it's not like the Cowboys aren't a mess either, so. All right. Speaking of coaching vacancies, LSU's Brian Kelly, this is an interesting report, is saying if Harbaugh leaves and the Michigan job is open, Brian Kelly would be interested. And, he's a Midwest guy. It makes sense. LSU will be solid next year anyway because they have a great program over there. But they aren't going to be the same without Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels leaving is going to take a bit of a hit. But yeah, Michigan, they're a great program too. They're probably still going to be... I don't think they're going to be national champions. If Harbaugh is to leave, which it seems like he's leaning towards that, if he is to leave, it seems like I don't see Michigan going back to... They're not going to be the same. Let's just put it that way. If Brian Kelly goes there, though, I can still see them being competitive in the Big Ten. So, yeah, I'm all for it. So, Brian Dable apparently had issues with the staff members in New York. He's an intense guy. When you look at who he's coached with, like Nick Saban, Belichick, and Sean McDermott, they're all intense people. So it's no surprise that that's his approach to coaching. I like the approach McVay, Shanahan take. They're more calm. But, it seems like both styles have worked. Saban and Belichick, very much winning coaches. So, yeah, so being intense can work. I don't think being intense is enough to take Daniel Jones or Tyrod Taylor to the playoffs. Like the Giants, especially when you're paying Daniel Jones $40 million and he's not even the best player on the offense. Forget the team, not even the best player on the offense side of the ball. So Dable, I personally did not like the decision to give him Coach of the Year last year. Not that he didn't do a good job. I mean, he took the Giants and made them 9-7-1. That's impressive. It's just in those last 9 games, they started 7-2, which was great and all. Then they went 2-7-1 for the rest of the year. They fell off a cliff the last 10 games. Wait, did I do the math right there? Wait a minute. Yeah. Or sorry, 2-5-1. They fell off a cliff the last 8 games. And Doug Peterson brought the Jags from being the worst in the league to the playoffs. So I thought what Doug Peterson did was better. And, Kyle Shanahan had the Niners as, I believe, he had the Niners as the 2 seed when he had 3 different quarterbacks throughout the year. So I thought what those two did was more impressive, but Dable he turned the Giants around. So I see why they gave it to him. But, I mean, he does have to, I think he has to do what Sean McDermott did. Like, Sean McDermott's still intense, but he loosened up a bit, and I think it's leading to the Bills' success, so that's what I would do if I were Brian Dable, but we'll see how that goes in New York. So, I went 4 for 6 for the wild card games. So I was only wrong about the Eagles and Packers. I'm not mad about being wrong about the Packers, because I'm a Packers fan, and also, I mean, it was tough to believe that the Packers would beat the Cowboys with a first-year quarterback. I am mad about the Eagles, though, because I was really on the fence about who would win that game, and I went with the Eagles at the end of the day, and did they even score a touchdown? I mean, they did score a touchdown. Okay, they scored 1. But, that was rough. So, all right, 4 for 6 on that. So, okay, I'm going to go through it. I'm going to go through the divisional round games, tell you my predictions. So, Texans-Ravens. So, they played earlier in the year. Actually, they played week 1. C.J. Stroud's first game. Obviously, the Ravens killed them. That gives 25-9. But things are probably going to be different this time around. Ravens are still going to win. I'm not changing that. But the Texans are going to put up, I'm saying 21 points, because I like the Ravens' defense. I think John Harbaugh's a great coach. So I'm saying the Texans are going to put up 21. Going to have a good game, but the Ravens are going to put up 30, and it's going to be 30-21. Ravens advance to the AFC Championship. Niners and the Packers, favorite team. Fortunately, as great as this story is with Jordan Love, we always lose to the Niners in the playoffs, so it's hard for me to say that they're even going to be competitive. I mean, hey, they were competitive last time. It was our special teams that blew it. But I think they are going to be competitive. I do. I'm honestly not counting out an upset here for the Packers. It's just hard. I mean, they're off of 2 weeks. The Niners are off of 2 weeks rest, and it's, the Packers, they're off a week where they played a lot of snaps against the Cowboys. So it's hard for me to say that this is going to be competitive, but I'm thinking high-scoring game, 33-27 49ers. Lions-Bucks. Honestly, I wasn't surprised by the Lions, but I was by the Bucks. I thought they'd be a horrible team, but Baker Mayfield has proven me wrong. And this is going to be a competitive game, the way I see it. I do think they're out-coached. I think Dan Campbell is better as a head coach than Todd Bowles is. And I think the Lions have better weapons. Because honestly, outside of Mike Evans, not many great wide receivers on the Buccaneers. So I'm going to go, I think Baker Mayfield stays in the game. But ultimately he loses to Jared Goff and the Lions 24-20. Lions advance to the NFC title game. Now, the big one I saved best for last. Chiefs and Bills. This is a tough one. Like I said, the Chiefs are the most vulnerable they've ever been since Mahomes got there. And that leaves a good chance for the Bills to come through. The thing is, they both the Bills and Chiefs, their offenses have been the least effective they've been since Allen and Mahomes, entered the league. But their defenses have been much better. So they're both in very similar positions. But the Bills are hot. They're 5-0. They've won their last 5. The Chiefs, they beat the Bills are actually on a... Hold on. Bills are actually on a 6-game winning streak. But the Chiefs have been a little shaky. So I like... It's also in Buffalo. I like the Bills here. In a close one. I think they stay in the game. They win with, I'm going to say, a 2-minute drill by Josh Allen. 26-20, Bills take it home. So, just a summary. Ravens, Ravens-Bills, AFC Championship, and Niners-Lions, NFC Championship. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to see a Lions-Texans Super Bowl, but I don't think it's going to happen. All right. So, all right, let's shift to the Eagles again. I mean, like I said, they have a great O-line. I don't think it's a roster problem. I think it's Nick Sirianni is not a great coach. I think he was covered up by Shane Steichen and his offensive genius. And I can typically defend coaches when they lose. Like, outside of his rookie year, Dak Prescott hasn't had the best performances in these postseason games, So I can, and CeeDee Lamb, it was Dak Prescott connection was just the least effective it's ever been. So you can blame other people other than McCarthy. But, when Shane Steichen was there, they made a Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts was great. A.J. Brown was great. Devontae Smith was great. So it seems like when they have a good offensive coordinator, they're very much effective. But without him, without a great OC, and just Nick Sirianni, they're not the same. And, I think, the best coaches lose a coordinator and keep their team going. Matt LaFleur was the offensive coordinator for the Rams in 2017. They made the playoffs. They lost with the rookie Jared Goff. But then Matt LaFleur left after that year, and Sean McVay brought them to that Super Bowl the next year. He just kept it going. Matt LaFleur is a great offensive coach, was a great OC, but him leaving didn't have an effect on Sean McVay because Sean McVay is a great coach. And even on the defensive side, Kyle Shanahan losing Robert Saleh, nothing really changed because Kyle Shanahan's a great coach. Sirianni can't get the offense going without Shane Steichen. And, I just think you can't lose your team, and it just seemed like they quit late in the game. I just don't think... I think Sirianni just lost his team, and I don't like his odds at being a coach next year. All right, so George Pickens ripped the officiating against the Bills yesterday. You can blame officiating all you want. They were outplayed that game. They never really stood a chance, to be honest with you. It's like the Rams-Lions game. You could blame officiating. I just think the Lions, at the end of the day, were the better team. And same thing, Bills, they were just a better team. They were outmatched, the Steelers. Mason Rudolph, it's great that he is showing improvement from years past, but he's no Josh Allen. You know? They don't have the weapons Buffalo has. I mean, I like Najee Harris, but the only thing Jesus, I can't even speak. The one thing the Steelers have the Bills beaten is defensive coaching, I think. I think Mike Tomlin's a better defensive coach than I think he's a better defensive coach than Sean McDermott. I will say that. But Sean McDermott has a slight balance that Tomlin doesn't have. So, you could go against officiating all you want. There's nothing... I don't think there was anything the officials could have done for you that would have helped you beat the Bills. So Max Crosby talked about the Raiders head coaching search again. He said the Raiders made a mistake sticking with Josh McDaniels instead of keeping Rich Bisaccia in 2022. Honestly, he's not wrong about Josh McDaniels. He was not a great head coach at all. But I think the Raiders... Listen, you got Davante Adams. You got Josh Jacobs. You have some weapons. It's just Jimmy G is not the guy, He's a good filler. He's not a guy that's going to... Unless you have a really good roster and a really good coach, he's not taking you to a Super Bowl. Yes, he made one with Kyle Shanahan, Deebo Samuel, Raheem Mostert, and a great defense. But he doesn't have that in Oakland. So you got to get a better quarterback. I would draft the quarterback. I would kind of start from scratch. And like I said, you got... The Raiders, they have weapons. It's not like they're not a completely dead team. They're not the Patriots, is what I'm saying. The Patriots are a dead team. They got no one. There's no one on the Patriots team that I can see being a dangerous weapon. But the Raiders, Jacobs, Davante Adams, those are two great offensive weapons. Obviously, Max Crosby on the defense. You get the coach right and the quarterback right, and you're golden. But that both those things have to happen this year, the way I see it. Because that way you get the biggest jump. Because some people are debating, do they get the quarterback right first or the coach right first? Honestly, as long as you get both right at some point, you should be fine. I don't know who would be a good fit for the Raiders. They seem pretty locked in on Antonio Pierce being the guy, but I mentioned yesterday how Max Crosby said he would request a trade if Antonio Pierce is not the coach, but listen. I think maybe... I don't know what coach to get, but I think draft a Michael Penix or a Bo Nix. They should be there when the Raiders draft. I don't see why they wouldn't. The Raiders have the... Oh, wait. Oh, damn, they went 8-9 this year? Alright, so they're going to need some... They're going to need people to start... They're going to need people to pass on Penix and Bo Nix. But it is possible. I mean, the Bears have the first pick. Even if... I mean, listen. The Bears... It seems like they're going to go with a new quarterback, but... I mean, they're probably going to take Caleb Williams. I don't see why you would take... Because if they're not going to trade the number one pick, then... just take Caleb Williams at one. There's no reason to take anyone else. The Pats are probably going to take Drake May. Cardinals are going to stick with Kyler Murray. Commanders might go for someone. Chargers are going to stick with Herbert. They're not changing that. The Titans, I'm assuming, are going to see what they have in Will Levis. Giants, I don't see why they would draft a quarterback because they're paying Daniel Jones $40 million. So I think it would be dumb to draft another quarterback. And if it's going to be a backup, no reason to draft him in the first round. Jets might draft a backup quarterback. Because I don't see why I don't see the Jets having anyone except for Aaron Rodgers start next year. Then the Falcons, they're going to see what they have in Desmond Ridder. Then the Bears go again. Like I said, they're drafting a quarterback with one of those picks. Vikings probably going to keep Kirk Cousins. Broncos, I think Wilson's going to hold on. Then you got the Raiders. So the Raiders, it's very much possible that the Raiders can get Bo Nix or Michael Penix. Draft one of those guys. Hopefully you get the coach right. And then go from there. So last segment of the day, I'm going to talk about the Saints firing Pete Carmichael, who was there for 15 seasons, the longest tenured OC in the league up until today. So they got to start an offensive coordinator search. I mean, listen. The one thing I will say is I would not give Derek Carr a voice in the offensive coordinator search. I don't think I don't like when people give players that kind of power. Because honestly, it's outside their area of expertise. You know, they're football players. They shouldn't be part of the search committee. You know, giving players personnel leverage is just, I think it only leads to more conflict in the organization. But yeah, I think the Saints, they're in a good spot right now. Because, listen, I like the Bucks surprised me this year, but that is by far the worst division. The Buccaneers barely got into the playoffs. They beat an Eagles team that is reeling. I don't think they're going to beat the Lions. So this is the time, I mean, but also the thing with the Bucs is they're actually in a position to get to the NFC Championship because of this weak division. And the Saints, the way I see it, are just as talented as the Bucs. They just have to get this hire right. If they get the offensive coordinator hire right, they have a chance at taking the division next year from the Bucs. And if they do, like I said, the Bucs, all they needed to do was get one upset, and now they're in a position for the NFC title game. So, all right, good stuff today. Almost a 45-minute podcast, holy crap. So, yeah, long story short, I got a snow day today, so I was able to get a podcast in, which I was happy about. But I'll reiterate what I said yesterday. I'm looking at maybe 1 or 2 podcasts in February. Maybe a few during spring break in April. And then from there, probably not until the summer. Once again, thank you guys for keeping up with this and staying with me through this inconsistent uploading schedule. But this is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose Dylan. Google Podcast, Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio. Dylan Miller on Daily Dose Dylan. Have a good day. I will see you probably in February.